Time is 11:24 a.m. We are back on the record.
Okay. So, Mr. Browder, the investigation that led to the search in 2007 started before 2007, didn't it?
Not that I'm aware of.
You weren't aware there was an investigation of Hermitage for tax fraud in 2004 and 2005?
I became aware of that recently.
You weren't aware of it at the time?
No.
But, so the Ministry of Interior was investigating Hermitage for tax fraud from 2004 and finally searched its offices with a search warrant in 2007, correct?
No.
What happened?
The Interior Ministry was investigating Hermitage in 2004, closed the case in 2005.
Who told you that?
I got information in 2000, some recent year.
From whom?
I can't remember where it came from.
So, just this amorphous information that it was closed.
Yes.
But you don't know whether it's true or not, it's just what somebody told you.
No, I'm pretty sure it's true.
Was it a person in a position to know?
Can't remember.
So we have this anonymous person who says the investigation was closed, but then there's a search warrant in 2007, and that we know. So we know that there was an investigation in 2004 and 2005, and a search warrant in 2000, search warrant executed in 2007, and then we have this amorphous, but I was told it was closed. That's all we know right now. Is that right?
Objection to form.
No.
What more do we know?
We know that it was closed in 2005.
From this source, unidentified source says it was closed in 2005.
Yeah.
No documents.
There might be.
But you don't have any.
I don't remember.
Okay. Is Mr. Sashua, who bought Daphne Step?
Yeah. No,
When-
his firm did, I think.
All right.
Maybe him. I don't remember.
Could you speak up a little?
I don't know exactly who bought it. I think it was him or his firm.
All right. And when did you first meet him?
1998.
And did you do business with him in any other ways?
He provided security for Republic National Bank, who was the business partner of my investment advisory firm.
Mr. Safra. So that you met him through Mr. Safra?
Correct.
Edmund Safra?
Correct.
Okay. So he provided security services, you said?
Security and risk management services.
Right.
And various legal services as well.
And you knew him from 1998 until when?
I guess still after I was kicked out of Russia in 2005.
You lost touch with him?
Yeah, now I have.
When did you lose touch with him?
I don't remember.
And so, did he do any due diligence to buy Dahlia Step?
I wasn't involved in the situation.
Sale of a company would generally generate a tax liability, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Do you know whether that tax liability was ever paid?
He confirmed it was.
Who confirmed it was?
Shashua.
In writing?
I think so.
You've seen the writing?
I've not personally, but I'm sure someone on my team has.
You have the writing?
I would assume so. I don't know.
All right. Well, we'd like that writing also. So in 2005, you were quite a supporter of Vladimir Putin's, right?
Correct.
And so at the time the investigation began, It wasn't politically motivated because you were a big supporter of the government at that point.
Objection to form.
Isn't that true?
No.
2004, you weren't a big supporter of the government?
In 2004, I was a big supporter of the government.
And the investigation started at that time?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't say the investigation started for political reasons, right?
I would say it did.
In 2004,
Yeah.
even though you were a big supporter of the government.
Yeah.
What were the political reasons in 2004?
We were big critics of corruption at Gazprom, one of the most important government-connected companies in the country.
And they were criticizing, the government was criticizing you for buying internal shares of Gazprom when you were a foreign company, right?
No.
That never happened?
They did, but not then.
I see. When did that happen?
It happened in 2013.
All right. Well, we'll get back into that. So let me see. Tab 61. I'm going to mark as Exhibit 9 a PowerPoint, 7 Big Myths About Russia. Do you recognize this document? Just for the record, it says by William Browder, Chief Executive Officer, Hermitage Capital Management, April of 2005. What's that? What's that? Okay, so do you recognize that document?
I do.
You put it together, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to go through all of it, but basically the theme here is that Mr. Putin's critics are wrong about it, right?
I think no.
Okay, you describe it. What's the theme?
The theme is that the Russian market is overly discounting the negative sentiment about Putin.
Okay. So that the market itself is more valuable because Putin's doing a good job.
No.
All right. Explain it to me then. Why is the market discounting,
The market,
overly discounting?
The market is overly discounting, as you just said, the Russian stocks because they're too pessimistic about Putin's governance of Russia.
I see. And so people ought to invest in Russia. That's kind of the point of this, right?
The point of this is that the market prices should be higher.
I see. So that your stocks will be worth more. Stocks that Hermitage Fund own will be worth more.
Yeah,
And you'll make more money.
correct.
Okay. Did you know Mr. Kasyanov?
Vaguely. He was the Prime Minister of Russia.
Right. Did you have personal contact with him?
Recently I have,
When was that?
3 months ago
Where was that?
in London.
And what was the occasion?
It was the 5th anniversary of Sergei Magnitsky's death.
And there was an event,
Yes,
and he was there,
yes.
and you and he spoke?
We spoke on the same panel, and and he joined for dinner afterwards.
You had dinner with him?
I had dinner with him and 30 people.
Did you speak to him directly?
Yeah.
What did you talk about?
We talked about the Putin regime, talked about Ukraine, talked about Sergei Magnitsky.
And did you and he agree on these subjects?
Yeah.
You did. Did you know him back when he was Prime Minister?
No.
Never met him?
I think I shook his hand once.
Did you meet Vladimir Putin at any point in time?
Never.
Now, when were you denied entry into Russia?
November 13th, 2005.
What's that? Yes, yes. All right, and when were you convicted?
Sometime in July 2013.
How about July 11, 2011? No? Is there an appeal you're referring to? All right, let me pull it out. Ah, you're right, 13. So this is an English translation along with the Russian in the back. Judgment in the name of the Russian Federation. And if you go to the end of it, it convicts you of tax evasion, correct?
Yes.
And you have said many times that Mr. Magnitsky was convicted posthumously. You've said that?
Yes.
And on the first page, it appears that it's dismissed against Mr. Magnitsky, correct?
No.
Under paragraph 4 of Article 24 of the Code of Criminal Procedure of the Russian Federation. Do you see that?
Yes.
So he wasn't convicted posthumously, right? You were wrong about that.
No. I don't read it as such.
I see. Well, let's look at the sentenced, which is 28 of 30.
Where is that?
Page 28 of 30, if you look at the top, there are page numbers on the top. I'd give you a Bates number, but mine's not Bates number. Just look at the top of the page there. All right. And it says sentenced. It's on Bates number 1434. Sentence only refers to you, correct?
I see my name here.
William Felix Browder found guilty of committed 2 crimes, and then it goes on, right?
Correct.
And there's nothing about Mr. Magnitsky being convicted of anything, correct?
I'm not a Russian criminal lawyer, so I couldn't make a judgment about this conviction.
Well, it appears from these two entries that you were wrong, that he was never convicted posthumously, right?
No.
You're sticking to your position even though the document says otherwise,
Yeah,
because you're not a Russian lawyer.
that's correct.
All right. But you have Russian lawyers working for you, right?
I do.
And they've reviewed this conviction, and they've said there's someplace in this conviction that it refers to Mr. Magnitsky as being convicted of something.
Objection. I think communications with his lawyers are topics that we should
All right.
not answer.
So do you have any basis for saying that Mr. Magnitsky is convicted of anything?
Yeah,
What's that?
advice from my lawyers.
Okay. I'm sorry, he just claimed privilege for you. I'm reading the document. It says the case is dismissed. The individual decision to dismiss the crime case on the basis of paragraph 4, article 24. You see that? So that's at the beginning. And at the end, sentenced only William Felix Browder. You're sticking by your position no matter what, right?
That's your
Objection to the form.
My analysis is different than yours.
You have anything in the document that you can point me to that suggests he's convicted?
I'm not a lawyer.
Well, you read English, right?
I do read English, but I am not a specialist on Russian law and Russian criminal procedure.
So based upon what you've read here, you might question what your lawyers told you then?
Without a full analysis, I wouldn't be able to make a judgment on this document.
I see. But you would agree this is the conviction. This is your conviction.
Apparently so.
Right. And it says what it says, so we'll let the judge or jury decide whether Mr. Magnitsky was ever convicted of anything, all right?
I'm sorry?
We'll allow the judge and jury to decide whether Mr. Magnitsky was convicted of anything or whether you got it wrong.
Objection to the form.
So is it a
Perhaps
question?
perhaps you got it wrong. Do you consider that?
I don't think I got it wrong.
Do you think you ever get anything wrong?
I get lots of things wrong.
Okay, good. Seems like you might have gotten this wrong. When you told people Mr. Magnitsky's a lawyer, did you also tell him he never went to law school and never had a law license?
I'm sorry,
When you how many times have you said Mr. Magnitsky's a lawyer?
I don't know.
50, 100, 200?
I don't know.
Many, many times, right?
Yep.
Have you ever told anybody that he didn't go to law school and didn't have a law degree?
No.
Did you tell him that he was working for you for many years and he was working in capacities other than legal?
Yep.
Did you tell these gentlemen over here that?
Yep.
It's pointing to Mr. Monteleone. All right, let's go to the complaint.
Which one? Our complaint to the government or the government's complaint?
The government's complaint, which I think is Exhibit 2, right?
Yeah.
All right, take a look at paragraph 25. So I'll read it. Paragraph 25, Exhibit 2, the complaint. Among the items seized in the search of Hermitage and Firestone Duncan's offices were the corporate stamps, the official charters, the original tax certificates, and the original registration certificates, which are defined there as corporate documents and seals, for Ryland, Parfinian, and Mahone. You see that?
Yes.
And then paragraph 26 says, unbeknownst to Hermitage or HSBC Guernsey, members of the organization used the seized corporate documents and seals to fraudulently re-register ownership of Ryland, Parfinian, and Mahone with the Russian corporate registry, right? Did I read that right?
Yep.
And then on paragraph 29, it says, on information and belief, the members of the organization who had stolen the corporate identities of Hermitage companies used the seized corporate documents and seals to forge backdated contracts with sham commercial counterparts for use in sham lawsuits against the Hermitage companies, right?
Yep.
So in other words, this is what you told the U.S. Attorney's Office, right?
Yep.
And as you describe it, then through the raid, the Ministry of Interior got the seals, correct?
Yep.
The June 2007 raid, the Ministry of Interior got the seals.
Yeah.
And then those seals were the same seals used to transfer the three Hermitage companies, Parfinian, Ryland, and Mahone, right?
No. If you go back to the what you read, let's just read it again. 25. Among the items seized in the search for Hermitage and Firestone's offices were the corporate stamps, the original charters, the original tax certificates, the original registration certificates, quote, corporate documents and seals for Ryland, Parfinian, and Machion. That's what I said.
Right.
And those documents, all those documents, some or all of those documents were used in the fraud.
And one of the things that you've said is the seals were used in the fraud, right?
Yeah.
The seals that were seized by the Ministry of Interior were used in the fraud. You've said it repeatedly, right?
I've said stamps, seals, and certificates were used in the frauds.
But you said the seals were used in the fraud, correct?
Correct.
But you've known for many years that there is an analysis that shows the same seals were not used in the fraud. Isn't that true?
No.
You're not aware of that?
No.
Never heard that?
Vaguely, I've heard the criminals using that argument.
Really? What criminals
Members of the Interior Ministry.
have used that argument?
Yeah.
And Mr. Kleiner never informed you that there was a forensic analysis that showed the same seals were not used?
No.
I need to talk to you outside.
Right now?
We
or
need
during
a,
break?
yeah, right now.
Okay.
Time is 11:47 a.m. We are off the record.
Do you gentlemen have cards by any chance?
You know what? I've got them here. You guys don't need the video, right? Okay. So you can have these.
Do you have any other cards? Who else do you have?
Mr. Kim.
Okay, I have Mr. Kim.
That's it.
Do you have cards by any chance?
I don't have mine with me, but I can grab one for you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, can I just, so I'm not super familiar with this form. I think each of these type of things, did I mess it up?
No, it's fine.
Okay, alright, so I get the exhibits and just scanned, or, I mean, like,
Right, scanned and linked.
okay, great. And the transcript next day. Do you need anything else?
Immediate.
Oh,
Tonight. No, no,
yeah, but
It's two sep-
next day is fine.
it's two separate, so it's this one and that one.
Oh, what's O and 2?
Right.
Oh, I see. What does O and 2 mean?
That's the transcript.
Okay, alright, now I'm totally
Right,
confused.
you're getting the original, not the copy.
Oh, okay, alright, fine. Why can't I do this next day?
Just because that's what they already had ordered. I don't know who put it through.
Okay.
I mean, if you want the next day.
Yeah, I just want the next day, sorry. This is just for my copy.
Okay, and do you need a rough also? You would
No,
get the.
don't need the rough. Next
you would
day's
get the
fine.
copy.
Yeah. Okay, right. Okay, so did I'm sorry if I totally messed up your form.
It's
Oh.
We all ready?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, stand by, please. Time is 11:53 a.m. We are back on the record.
All right, Mr. Browder, let me first ask you that Mr. Kleiner never told you that he was aware of a forensic analysis showing that the same seals were not used.
Correct.
Is that your testimony?
Correct.
All right, I have materials that are under seal that I want to examine you about that I can't, and I'm going to seek to have the court unseal those, and I'll proceed with my examination at this point.
Okay, when, at least our position is that the witness has already testified to what he knows, and so such documents would not be relevant. And if you want to ask other questions about the witness's knowledge, you're welcome to.
Well, they may refresh his recollection or other things. In any case, we'll argue about it when the witness is not here and we're not wasting his time.
Okay.
All right. So, Mr. Browder, it is the seals and these other corporate documents, according to this complaint, that ties the Ministry of Interior into the scheme to defraud. Isn't that true?
Correct.
Objection to form.
And it's the only thing that ties the Ministry of Interior into the scheme to steal $230 million.
Objection to form.
Incorrect.
What else is there?
Many other things that are listed in the complaint.
Well, show me something, because it's the only thing I can find.
Okay. Why don't we look? First of all, I'm not a lawyer here, but let me try to make
Well,
the government's
it's your story.
No, it's the government's story.
Oh, it's the government's story and you don't support it.
No, the government is making the case.
I know, but the government...
I'm just here to let me.
No, let's stick with that point for a minute, Mr. Browder. This is the government's case, and I thought you told me that you read this and everything that you knew about was accurate.
I told you that everything that I was familiar with in this complaint was accurate.
And the $230 million theft from the Russian treasury, that's a story that came from you, and you've told to several law enforcement agencies, correct?
Objection
Correct.
to form.
And you started a proceeding in Switzerland based upon that story, right?
Objection to form.
Correct.
And the seals were part of your story from the very beginning, right?
The stamps, seals,
And other
certificates,
other
and
documents.
original items of incorporation, and also other documents seized during the raid were part of the fraud. I don't know exactly how the tactics were used to execute the fraud, but I know many of these documents were used in the fraud.
All right, and you're saying they're the same documents, and that's what ties the criminal investigation of you into the $230 million fraud, correct?
Yes.
And so if it wasn't the same documents, then the criminal investigation of you is not tied into the $230 million fraud, correct?
Objection to form.
I don't understand the question.
Very simple. What ties the two events together, the $230 million fraud and the criminal investigation of you, are these corporate documents and seals that are alleged here to be the same, taken from Hermitage in the search and used in the $230 million fraud, correct?
Objection to form.
I'm still having a hard time following you.
I just read you 3 paragraphs
Right.
that say the corporate documents and seals were seized by the Ministry of Interior in the search in June of 2007, and then those same documents and seals were used to commit the $230 million fraud. Right? We
Yeah.
just went through that.
Yeah.
Okay? And that is the link between the Ministry of Interior and the investigation of you and the $230 million fraud. If the $230 million fraud were done with other documents, there is no tie between the $230 million fraud and the criminal investigation of you. Isn't that correct?
Objection
No.
to form.
No.
Why not?
And you're mischaracterizing you're simplifying and mischaracterizing the whole story.
Well, I'm just going on the facts in the complaint. The facts in the complaint are as we read them.
You read them selectively without reading other
I don't think
facts. in
there's a
the
question pending. I'm starting to watch a debate, so maybe you could ask the question.
Is there any other tie, other than those documents, between the $230 million fraud and the Ministry of Interior?
Yes. Give me a moment to find the relevant
Go ahead.
paragraphs. Paragraph 22. On information and belief, should I read it out loud? Or would you
Go
like
ahead.
to read it? The $230 million fraud scheme began on or about 28th April 2007, when key members of the organization flew to Larnaca, Cyprus, to plan the crime. On that date, Artem Kuznetsov, who was one of the Interior Ministry officers who was investigating us, then a lieutenant colonel in the Russian Interior Ministry, flew with Dmitry Kluyev, a convicted fraudster, the owner of Universal Savings Bank, and on information and belief, the mastermind of the organization, from Moscow to Larnaca on a private jet. On information and belief, they were met in Larnaca 2 days later by Pavel Karpov, then a major in Russia's Interior Ministry, as well as 2 lawyers, Andrei Pavlov and his wife Yulia Mayorova, all of whom flew together from Moscow on Aeroflot Su-487. Pavlov had known Kluyev since 2001 and had provided him with legal services from time to time. On May 5th and May 6, 2007, Interior Ministry officers Kuznetsov and Karpov and the lawyers Pavlov and Mayorova returned to Moscow. On May 8, 2007, the convicted fraudster Kluyev was met in Larnaca by Olga Stepanova, the head of Moscow Tax Office number 28, and her then husband Vladlen Stepanov, who flew to Larnaca together on Aeroflot Su-237. Subsequently, Kluyev, Stepanova, and Stepanov returned to Moscow. Approximately 1 month later, on or about June 4th, Kuznetsov led approximately 25 officers in a search of Hermitage's office in Moscow. The officers removed Hermitage's computer server, virtually all of its computers, and dozens of boxes of confidential documents and records. Later that day, Kuznetsov joined approximately 25 officers in a search of the offices of Firestone Duncan, a law firm that advises Hermitage, HSBC, Guernsey, and Hermitage. Let me skip to other relevant parts of this whole thing. Paragraph 31. The forged contracts contained multiple suspicious features. The contracts between Logos Plus and the Hermitage companies purported to require Logos Plus, a company with a total capital at the time of US $300, to pay Hermitage companies approximately US $500 million to buy securities. Additionally, the forged contracts included extensive confidential information about the Hermitage companies, including bank account information, information on assets and holdings, custodian banks, and addresses of registration and incorporation of the Hermitage companies. Such information was confidential, but was contained in the records that had been seized from the Hermitage and Firestone Duncan on or about June 4, 2007. Moreover, although referencing confidential information, the contracts contained various mistakes and inaccuracies, including referencing bank accounts that had not been opened and using addresses that were incorrect at the relevant time. I could study this more carefully to find other links.
All right, well, let's go with what you said. So first of all, the investigation of you started in 2004, not in 2007, right?
The investigation started in 2004 and closed in 2005.
According to some anonymous, unnamed person, right?
Wrong, according to my knowledge.
And your knowledge comes from an anonymous, unnamed person who you won't tell us who it is because you can't remember, right? That's what you told us before, right?
I don't recall who told me that.
So it's an anonymous, unnamed person who told you it was closed in 2005, can't be checked, can't be proven, right?
Objection to
Investigation started in 2004. You've acknowledged that. So let's go to Mr. Kuznetsov and Mr. Pavlov. They are investigators in the Ministry of Interior, correct?
Incorrect.
What are they?
Kuznetsov is. Pavlov is a criminal.
I'm sorry, Karpov. I misspoke. Pavlov is a lawyer, right?
He was a member of the criminal enterprise.
Exactly, I misspoke. Mr. Karpov, they're both investigators, right?
One of them is a field operative, the other one is an investigator.
Right. And as you've told us, there are a lot of Cyprus corporations, right? That for people investing in Russia,
Correct.
they have good reason to be in Cyprus, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a yes?
Yes.
All right. So what witness is going to testify to the fact that Mr. Kuznetsov went to Cyprus with Mr. Kluyev?
What witness is going to testify?
Yes, what witness?
I'm not sure.
All right, so how do you know Mr. Kuznetsov went with Mr. Kluyev?
I've seen copies of travel records where they were on the same flight.
And where did you get those travel records?
We got them from an anonymous source in Moscow.
And who's your anonymous source?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No.
It's not, you're not going to tell us, you don't know.
I don't
There's
know.
another mysterious, unnamed person, right? Another mysterious, unnamed person gives you some documents.
I would describe this person as a whistleblower who gave us documents.
I see. But that's just a label. We don't know the name, we don't know the address, we don't know who it is, and we don't know where he got documents, and we don't know whether the documents are real, right?
I don't.
Any of that.
I don't know.
But you relied upon it.
My team did.
And you ultimately went to the U.S. Attorney's Office and said, this happened,
Objection to form.
right?
I provided this complaint to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
With this information, where you don't know the name of the person who gave you the information, you don't know where you got the information, you don't know whether it's real, and you don't know whether then these events actually happened, right?
Objection to form.
I trusted my team who did the analysis of the information and concluded that it was credible.
And do you know how they concluded it was credible?
No.
So, what we have is a story about people going to Cyprus, where Interior Ministry officers would logically go to conduct an investigation. Different kinds of investigations, correct?
No.
Why not?
We have an Interior Ministry officer going to Cyprus on the private jet of a convicted fraudster who he was involved in convicting, or who he was investigating. No, he was involved in convicting in a previous criminal case.
Ah, but that connection comes from an anonymous source, from documents that you don't know what they are, you don't know whether they're real, and you don't know whether somebody was setting you up, right?
Objection to form.
I trusted my team to verify the credibility of those documents.
And you haven't given us those documents, right?
I think
Once
they're-
again.
Well, no, those documents I think I have. They're in the public domain. Those documents are on the Russian Untouchables website, and I think you have them.
And that's your website.
You have the documents from our website. Yeah.
Okay. So, we have then a meeting, you say, of a tax official.
Objection to form to the you say.
I'm sorry. Correct. The complaint says that on May 8th, 2007, Mr. Kluyev met with Miss Olga Stepanova. Now, how do you know that?
Objection to form.
How do I know that?
Yeah, how do you know that? You told the U.S. Attorney this, right?
No.
Who told the U.S. Attorney this?
We provided information about the travel records of these individuals to the U.S. Attorney.
From an anonymous source of unknown authenticity, right?
From a source that my team believed to be credible.
Mm-hmm. And you have no idea who this source was?
No.
Have you introduced this source to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I'm not aware if they have or have not.
Mm-hmm. So, what we have that we can put our hands on are the seals and the other documents that we used in the fraud.
Objection
Right.
to form.
You don't know what was said in these meetings, right?
Objection to form.
These alleged meetings.
No.
Objection to form.
You have no idea what was said in these alleged meetings.
Objection to form.
You don't know if it had to do with an investigation of Mr. Kluyev, right?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Do you know whether these alleged meetings involved an investigation of Mr. Kluyev?
I wasn't at the meetings.
You don't know from another anonymous source.
Objection to form.
There are no anonymous sources about the actual contents of the meetings.
So you don't know if it involved a $230 million fraud.
I don't know.
The only thing we know that definitely involved a $230 million fraud were the corporate documents and seals.
Objection
No.
to form.
There was also the, I just read it to you. Should I read it again?
Well, you said,
I can read it again, it's no problem. I'm happy to.
I think we all remember.
Okay.
Do you like reading it?
I don't care.
I mean, if it makes you feel better, you can read it, but I
I
don't
don't
think anybody's forgotten what you read.
Okay.
That there was some information, but it was incorrect information, right?
No,
That's what you read.
I didn't.
Said there were bank accounts that weren't opened and things like that, right?
Objection to form.
I'd be happy to read it again if you don't understand what was written there.
I understand it, believe me. By the way, how do you know they even met in Larnaca? We go back to that. How do you know Mr. Kuznetsov and Mr. Kluyev, or Mr. Pavlov and Mr. and Julia Mayarova met in Larnaca?
What we do know is that Kluyev and Kuznetsov traveled on the same flight
That's all you know,
to Larnaca,
right? All you know is these people flew on the same flight.
on the same private jet that belonged to.
No, not as to Mr. Pavlov and the others. They flew on an Aeroflot flight.
Right.
They happen to be on the same plane.
Could be.
Mark, if there's no question pending, I'd like to just take 2 minutes to advise Mr. Browder about something. There's
Go
no
ahead.
question pending.
Yep. Be back.
Time is 12:11 p.m. We are off the record. Time is 12:13 p.m. We are back on the record.
All right, Mr. Browder, according to paragraph 22, Mr. Kuznetsov and Mr. Kluyev flew on a private jet. That's what it says, right?
Correct.
Did you ever say they traveled on an Aeroflot flight? Did you ever say they flew on an Aeroflot flight?
I don't remember.
It's possible you said that.
I don't know.
So going back to your investigation, are you saying there was no investigation of you in 2006?
We received a document from the Russian authorities saying that there are no criminal investigations in 2006.
Now, let me show you testimony of Mr. Magnitsky in 2006. What number are we on? So this is a record of evidence, October 18, 2006. It's an examination of Mr. Magnitsky. Is that what it appears to be?
I don't know.
I'll take your time to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, but what page was on it? Okay, so let me help you. You see the top, October 18, 2006.
Mm-hmm.
You see it's, as a witness, Mr. Magnitsky.
Yep.
You see on the next page, he's being asked about Saturn Investments.
Yes.
And about you and Mr. Sashua, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Same subject matter of that we went over from the Kalmykian Civil Court, right?
I'm not sure if it's the same or not.
Well, it's about Saturn, and he's asking about Mr. Sashua, and he's asking about power of attorney dated February 10, 2005, and about him being the general director of Saturn Investments at that point. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So there was an investigation in 2006 going on of the same events that we went over with the civil case, right?
I'm not sure if they're the same events.
All right. There was an investigation of how Hermitage Fund operated Saturn, and the investigation was going forth in 2006, correct?
I'm not sure if that's what this says.
What does it say in your view?
I'm not a lawyer.
Well, you can read it, though.
I'm not a Russian lawyer, and I don't know the significance of this document.
It's only 3 pages. It's in English. Investigator for particularly important cases of tax crimes investigation department. That's what it says, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's questioning Mr. Magnitsky.
Correct.
Did you know about that at the time?
No.
You had no idea about this in 2006.
No.
So maybe you were just wrong that the investigation didn't exist in 2006.
Or maybe the other information that I got is correct.
But somehow they were still examining Mr. Magnitsky in 2006? You think the two are consistent?
I don't understand the question.
They were questioning about a closed investigation.
They weren't questioning me.
As far as you know, Mr. Magnitsky was being questioned on an investigation of Saturn in 2006, right?
I don't know that.
Well, that's what this document shows you.
I don't
This
know-
is
I don't know anything
what it
about-
purports to be.
I don't know anything about the provenance of this document or the significance of this document, and I have not taken any advice on what this means. So it would be inappropriate.
So you're not going to venture an opinion on it?
It would be inappropriate as a layman to venture an opinion on what this says.
And you're sticking to your view that the investigation closed in 2005, even though we have this document?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, if you look in the middle of the page, the investigator's question, where do you currently work? The post. Answer, at the moment I'm working on a labor contract at CJSC Firestone Ducting as an auditor. That's his answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
But you still say he's a lawyer?
Yep.
Have you ever seen Mr. Magnitsky's signature?
I probably have, but I...
Yeah. Well, let me show you the last page. There are 3 signatures, and then one different one at the bottom. 3 signatures that look like Mr. Magnitsky's signature.
I don't know.
How many times have you seen Mr. Magnitsky's signature?
0.
It says here, paragraph 25, second sentence, in denying requests from Hermitage to return the corporate documents and seals, the Russian Interior Ministry subsequently confirmed that these documents and seals, which were seized in the search, led by Kuznetsov, remained in the custody of his colleague Karpov. You see that?
I do.
Isn't it true, Mr. Browder, that Mr. Karpov offered to return the documents and seals, and Mr. Kleiner and Mr. Cherniskov told him to keep them until the end of the investigation?
I don't know.
You've never heard that?
Vaguely, but I don't know the details.
Vaguely? What have you heard vaguely?
I vaguely recall some conversation of that nature, but I don't know the details.
With whom? Mr. Kleiner?
I don't even know with whom, at what point, when.
So that somebody told you that Mr. Karpov offered to return the seals and that your colleagues turned them down.
Perhaps, but
And this is a man who you're saying used those seals to commit a massive fraud.
Objection to form.
yeah, I'm saying that.
And
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that he used the seals, the stamps, the certificates of incorporation, and the other document, that whole paragraph that I read to you, along with a group of co-conspirators to commit the fraud.
did you tell the U.S. Attorney's Office that Mr. Karpov had offered to return the seals and other documents?
Well, since I'm not acutely aware of it, and I didn't.
Somebody told you, you've said that, somebody told you that Mr. Karpov offered to return the seals and your colleagues turned them down.
Objection.
Did you tell the U.S. Attorney's Office that Mr. Karpov had offered to return the seals?
No.
Hmm? What do you got? What is this? All right, so, yeah. Okay, I'm marking as Exhibit 12 the record of evidence, June 5th, 2008, of Mr. Magnitsky. It says Bates number starts at 721. All right, I'm going to direct your attention to page 727. First of all, Mr. Browder, have you ever seen this document before?
No.
I'm going to direct your attention to page 727. That's a Bates number on the lower right-hand side. So I'm going to direct your attention specifically to what I think is the fourth paragraph. It starts in November and December 2007. It says the following: in November and December 2007, a representative of Firestone Duncan Limited, V.Y. Yellen, visited the investigator, P.A. Karpov, a few times to retrieve from Karpov documents and seals impounded during the search on the 4th of June 2007. From what V.Y. Yellen said, I'm aware that P.A. Karpov was also ready to give out documents and seals of Parfinian Limited Liability Company, Ryland Limited Liability Company, and McCone Limited Liability Company. However, V.G. Kleiner and I.S. Cherkasov requested the seals from Karpov be not retrieved unless criminal proceedings are instituted to investigate into illegal re-registration of the companies and lawsuits based on forged evidence and powers of attorney, and the documents be received solely in accordance with a detailed inventory specifying each document transferred. As a result, those seals and documents would stay with P.A. Karpov. Do you see that? It goes on.
Yeah.
Is this the first time? It's not the first time you've heard this, right? You've told us, somebody told you that.
It's the first time I've read this document.
It's not the first time you've heard that Karpov offered to return the seals and your colleagues turned them down. Right?
No. Correct.
Okay. And you never told the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've established that, right?
I've never told the U.S. Attorney's Office, correct.
What? Let me go back to a couple points we handled before. You said you worked with reporters. Did you give out information to reporters?
Could you be more specific?
Well, for instance, the information you got that the Swiss prosecutor said you could give to the United States, did you give it to reporters?
No.
You knew you shouldn't give it to reporters?
I don't know whether I should or shouldn't have, but I didn't.
You post any of it on your website?
We posted our complaint on the website.
Is any of the information in Exhibit 1, which was the letter to the Manhattan DA, was that from the Swiss prosecutor?
I don't know.
So the Cyprus companies that own Saturn and Dia Step were Cone and Glendora. You're not aware of that?
I don't know the names of the companies.
All right. So who controlled those the Cyprus companies?
The manager of the fund, HSBC Management Guernsey.
And who gave the manager of the fund instructions?
Which they took decisions on their own.
Investment decisions?
They took investment decisions and structural decisions.
So it wasn't Hermitage Fund that set up Saturn and Dia Step to take advantage of the tax regime in Kalmykia. It was HSBC on their own?
No, HSBC was the manager of the Hermitage Fund. The Hermitage Fund didn't take a decision.
I understand. You were the advisor.
Right. So the advice probably most likely came from, and I don't know exactly, but it probably came from professional accountants and lawyers.
That you directed to HSBC Guernsey.
No.
So your role as advisor didn't include the tax structure in Kalmykia?
My role as advisor was focused on picking stocks, doing company analysis, and doing corporate governance activism. I wasn't a specialist in taxes and other such things.
All right, so that HSB Guernsey didn't decide what stocks that these companies would be investing in, right?
So I provided the investment advice to the manager,
Right, and they followed your advice.
sometimes, mostly.
So HSBC Guernsey is a trustee, correct?
No, HSBC Trust Company is the trustee. HSBC Management Guernsey is the investment manager.
Okay, so HSBC Trust Guernsey, is that what you said it was?
Is the trustee.
Is the trustee. And the trustee actually has the ownership of the two Cyprus companies, which are Glendora and Cone.
The unit trust, of which they're the trustee, has the unit trust.
There's a trust entity.
They're the trustee of a unit trust.
Yes.
The unit trust owns various assets directly and through other vehicles.
Okay, so the unit trust owned Glendora and Cone, the Cyprus companies,
Correct.
and they owned Saturn and Diastep.
Yes, I believe so. I'm not sure if those are the two owners. I don't have that in front of me.
And HSBC Guernsey Trust set up a trust that also owned Parfinian, Ryland, and Macomb.
No, HSBC didn't set up a trust. HSBC
Was the trustee of a trust.
was a trustee that owned Cyprus companies, and I can't remember who the holding companies were, who set up those companies.
Okay. So the trust owns Cyprus companies, which then own the Russian companies.
Correct.
All right. And Parfinian and Ryland and Macomb were the Russian companies.
Correct.
And at the time of the $230 million fraud, they had no stock in them.
Who had no?
Parfinian, Ryland, and Macomb.
Correct.
And so the Cyprus companies, when these companies were re-registered, lost no money because there were no assets in the three Russian companies. Correct?
No.
They lost no value. The net worth of Parfinian, Ryland, and Macomb was zero. They had no assets. Correct?
No.
They had assets.
Correct.
What assets did they have?
They had bank accounts.
Which had no money in them.
Is
Correct?
that a question?
Yes.
Yeah. No, they did have money in them.
How much money did they have?
I can't be sure, but I think $10,000–$15,000.
Do you have bank records that show that?
I'm not sure.
Have you given any bank records of Parfinian, Ryland, and Macomb to the U.S. Attorney?
I don't know.
So when the companies were re-registered, was there money removed from the bank accounts?
I'm not sure.
They wanted the companies. They weren't interested in $10,000 or $15,000, right? They opened new bank accounts, correct?
Yes.
With the re-registered companies.
Correct.
So the $10,000 or $15,000 was still there in the bank accounts, as far as you know.
I don't know what the status of that $10,000 or $15,000 was.
As far as you know, that money was still there and was not taken when the companies were re-registered, correct?
No.
What? Am I wrong or am I right?
You're wrong. As far as I
Just
know,
tell me you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, so the answer is you don't know.
I don't know.
All right. So the money might very well have still been there, correct?
Very well suggests that it's still there. I don't know.
You don't know either way.
I don't know either way.
As far as you know, that money wasn't stolen. You don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, so we've established that. As far as you know, the money wasn't stolen. In which case, the Cyprus companies didn't lose anything of value.
Objection to form.
I don't know.
Okay, good. We'll leave it at that. Well, just to complete the chain, as far as you know, the trust didn't lose anything, right?
No, I don't know that.
Right. And the money belonged to the trust, it didn't belong to HSBC Guernsey, correct?
It belonged to HSBC Trust Company.
A trust that the trust company oversees, as trustee, own those assets, the companies and whatever bank accounts they have.
The trustee owned them as the trustee.
Well, the trustee was the trustee of a trust, I think. You told me that at the beginning.
Right.
Okay.
But the trustee was the formal owner of the assets.
All right. When do we take lunch? Is this a good time?
Sure. If you want.
Can we carry on until 1, just because...
If you want. It's 12:40. If you want to go 10, 15 more minutes and
Sure.
then we can break. that'd
I'll
be
go.
great.
So, going back to Exhibit 1. If you look at tab 7. There's a chart, correct?
Correct.
You've seen this chart before, right?
Yep.
Who created this chart?
Vadim Kleiner.
And do you know what from what documents he created this chart?
Nope.
And you don't know where he got the documents that he used to create the chart, right?
Right.
Right?
Right.
And you don't know whether in Russia, there are a number of Russian banks here, correct?
Correct.
Intercommerce, USB, right?
Correct.
Bank. You don't know whether it's legal for Mr. Kleiner to have information about these accounts from those banks, right?
I don't know.
And then you don't know how he did the tracing,
No, I don't know.
but you've relied upon it,
I have.
and you've given it to the U.S. Attorney's Office, right?
I have.
And so, for instance,
Actually, no, that's incorrect. I gave it to the New York District Attorney's Office.
all right, and they gave it to, as far as you know, they gave it to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
That's correct.
Let me go back. How many times did you meet Todd Hyman?
Several? I can't remember.
More than 5?
I don't recall.
Is it more than 10?
No.
Did you talk to him on telephone?
Yeah.
He had your telephone number?
I'm not sure how the telephone connection was made.
Did you call him? He call you?
I don't remember.
He had your email address?
I don't know.
Did you have his email address?
I don't know.
Did you have the email address of anybody in the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I know for sure I have Paul Monteleone's and Sharon Levin's.
And you've exchanged emails with him?
Yes.
On approximately how many?
I don't recall.
100?
I doubt it.
50?
No.
But you haven't given those, you have those, right? You have access to those emails.
Yeah.
But you haven't given them to us. So I can't question you about them today.
Objection to form.
Isn't there a...
Just yes or no for now. If they're going to claim a privilege.
I
they'll do
need
it.
to get some advice on whether there's a privilege issue here.
Take a few moments to discuss with the...
All I'm asking is yes or no, whether he has the emails. I mean, the fact that he hasn't produced them, we can get into a fight later about whether you're going to claim privilege, and we haven't gotten to privilege logs, we haven't gotten any of that.
Fair enough, but the witness says that he has a concern that he wants to discuss whether or not there's something privileged, and we would request an opportunity to discuss whether or not there's a privilege.
So if you want to take the break now, I guess we could kill
No,
two birds with one
let's,
stone.
why don't you guys do it over lunch? I'll hold the question so that we can keep going. All right, so I'm looking at this chart, which is Exhibit 1, Tab 7. And I see that between the ZHK account at Surbank and the Universe account at Mastrio Economy Bank, the amount of money that you're tracing increases from, in dollars, 33 million to 53 million. See that?
Objection to form.
So you've got number 11, 12 million, number 12. I'm sorry, number 11 is in rubles, 525, but in dollars, the conversions here, it's 21 million. Number 12 is 12 million. And then you get down to the next level, the Granny Sever Bank, and you got $26 million, $27 million coming out of Granny Sever Bank. That's $53 million, right?
Right.
Can you explain to us how you would trace and know that it was the Russian treasury money that was going through Craney Sever to Bunakan and Elenis, and not some unassociated, as far as we know, clean money? $20 million of clean money. Can you explain that?
Objection to form.
So you have no information about that?
I didn't do the tracing.
Yeah. So I have to go to Mr. Kleiner for that,
Objection to form.
right? We have to ask the question of Mr. Kleiner?
I don't know I don't know who you can who can explain this to you, but I can.
Okay. Well, Mr. Kleiner did it, right?
He did the analysis, correct?
Right. So if I want to understand this chart, shouldn't I be asking Mr. Kleiner?
Objection to form.
I don't know. You have to decide within your own team how you want to get your own explanations.
I'm asking for the name of the person who can explain to me how you went to the U.S. Attorney's Office with a case where there's $20 million of clean money going into accounts, and you say it's dirty money that went to our client.
Objection to form. The use of you.
Is there a question?
Yes.
What's the question?
How do you explain that $20 million in apparently clean money go to Bunakan and Elenis, and $800,000 come out, and you say it had to be dirty money that went to Prevezon?
Objection to form.
Do you have an explanation?
I didn't do the tracing.
But you had the meeting. You've been the one going around writing books, touting it, trying to get our client on the Magnitsky list, haven't you?
No.
You've never tried to put Mr. Katzev on the Magnitsky list?
No.
You never talked to anybody about that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you talk to the U.S. Attorney about that?
No.
But you did urge them to file a lawsuit in New York against Prevezon, owned by Mr. Katzev, right?
I filed a, I provided to the New York District Attorney's Office a complaint about suspected money laundering in New York, in which I asked the U.S. government to investigate.
So you had no idea what the logic of for saying that where there's $20 million of identified clean money going through the accounts and only $800,000 coming out, that we had to say was dirty money and Mr. Katzev got dirty money. You can't give me any explanation for that at all.
Objection to form.
I didn't do the tracing.
So you have no explanation. Yes or no? You have an explanation or you don't?
I didn't do the
Objection to
tracing.
form.
Do you have an explanation or not?
Do I have an explanation?
Objection to form. I'm not sure what we're talking about.
I don't
We're
know.
talking about, on this chart, showing $33 million of supposedly Russian treasury money going into Craney Sever Bank, a correspondent account, and coming out is $20 million of, at least $20 million of clean money, at least. And only $800,000 going to Prevazone. If there's $20 million of clean money going into those accountants and only $800,000 coming out, you have no explanation for why that had to be Russian treasury money that went to Prevazone.
This is not my area of expertise.
I'm asking you whether you have any explanation from anybody.
I don't have an explanation.
And who would have the explanation in your organization?
I think our entire legal team would have an explanation.
Mr. Kleiner's the one who did this?
I think he was the one who produced the piece of paper.
Oh, he didn't do the work.
I think he did it as a member of a team.
I see. Does he have the same disaffection for testifying that you have?
Objection
Is that
to
why
form.
you're not naming him?
Objection to form.
No.
He's willing to come to New York and testify.
Objection to form.
I have no idea what he's willing to do or not do.
He works for you, right?
No.
He works for Hermitage Fund, of which you are the chief executive officer, right?
No.
Who does he work for?
He works for Hermitage Capital LLP.
Of course. Okay, I keep getting the entities wrong. And you are the CEO of that
Actually,
company.
he doesn't. Let me correct myself. He's a partner at Hermitage Capital LLP.
And you're the CEO, right?
No.
Who's the CEO?
There's the partnership. There's no CEO of the partnership.
I see. Are you willing to advise Mr. Kleiner he should come to New York and testify about this?
Objection to form.
It's not my place to advise him on what to do or not do, and the lawyers will advise him on what to do or not do.
But you wouldn't tell him to come, would you?
Objection to form.
I wouldn't tell him to come or not come. It's not my place to tell him. The lawyers will advise him on what the right.
You're not willing to go back and say, Mr. Kleiner, I put my reputation on the fact that $20 million went into Bunacon LNS and $800,000 came out, and we're saying it's dirty money. Hermitage has its reputation on this. I recommend you go to New York and explain this to these people. You wouldn't say that?
Objection to form.
I would go to our lawyers and ask them to advise him on what the right legal position is to take in this case.
So the answer is, no, I wouldn't give him that advice myself.
Objection to form.
I would go to our lawyers.
I think we better stop.
Okay.
All right? What
Time
time
is
should we
12:50
start?
p.m. We are off the record.
I'm going to start in exactly 1